We want to sketch the graph of f of x equals 3 minus 2x over x minus 1. And to do that, let's go back and review the things we've learned in today's lesson. First of all, if we want to find the domain, we're going to take our denominator and set it equal to 0. And that gives us that x is equal to 1. So our domain is all real numbers except 1. And we can write that in interval notation as negative infinity to 1 union 1 to infinity. The second thing we learned were vertical asymptotes. To find the vertical asymptotes, we're going to, again, take the denominator and set it equal to 0, and we'll get x equals 1. And that's a vertical asymptote provided that it's not a 0 of the numerator. If you were to plug 1 into the numerator, you would get 3 minus 2, which is 1, not 0. So therefore, this actually is a vertical asymptote, x equals 1. And the last thing that we talked about were horizontal asymptotes. To find the horizontal asymptotes, compare the degree of the numerator to the degree of the denominator. The degree of the numerator is 1, and the degree of the denominator is 1. So our horizontal asymptote is going to be the ratio of the leading coefficients, which would be y equals negative 2 over 1, or y equals negative 2. So we're going to use these facts to sketch our graph. And what we know is that we have a vertical asymptote at 1, and we have a horizontal asymptote at negative 2. And so these asymptotes serve as boundary lines for our function. So to get a good sketch of the graph, we can try a point on either side of our vertical asymptote. So if we go 1 to the right of our vertical asymptote, let's try f of 2. We would get 3 minus 2 times 2 divided by 2 minus 1. 3 minus 4 is negative 1, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So that means that when x is 2, y is equal to negative 1. Now, if this is the point that's on my graph, and I have to stay in between the green and red boundary lines, then that means that my graph has to go like this. Now, let's also choose a point on the other side of our vertical asymptote. So, for example, let's choose 0. We would have 3 minus 2 times 0 over 0 minus 1, which would be 3 divided by negative 1, which is negative 3. So at 0, our graph is at negative 3. So to stay between our asymptotes, we see that our function would have to look like this.